Hi, this is Roger Joseph Manning Jr., and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with Jay Gilbert and Michael Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Dima, music streaming highlights. Streaming platforms name top 2022 songs.
From Rolling Stone, 23 moments that made us smile in 2022.
And from Hypebot, why this video is like an official roadmap to success on TikTok.
From Variety, audio engineers have the ears of the artists and now a piece of the project. Well, Happy New Year, everybody. It is 2023. How is that even possible, 2023? Well, it is possible because it's possible. And we are glad you're here. Jay and I are ready to rock in 2023. So let us start the podcast right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air. 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 Standing by. Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Jay, 2023, it just seems so far in the future, and yet it's here.
Here we are.
Here. Oh, my goodness.
It's going to be a fun year. Look at all the things we learned and all the great music we discovered and all the great stuff from 2022.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is episode 125.
Yeah, we are, and I think we've mentioned over the years that the average podcast lasts 7 episodes.
That's right,
and so we're all about consistency here.
And they said it wouldn't last.
They said it wouldn't last, but we are again as we start a new year, we are so appreciative of the folks that tune into us every week because couldn't do it without our groovy listeners. So we are thankful for that as we head into 2023. But it is weird to say 2023. You know, it takes me a good 4 months before I kind of have acclimated to the new year. Just naming it and saying it. And
right. Remember when we used to write checks instead of using ATM cards?
Yes.
You know, it always took me a good month to, I'd always cross it out and write in the new one.
Yes. Without a doubt. And what about you for, what do you, in sort of not necessarily resolutions, but what are you looking forward to doing? Maybe something you haven't done in the past this year?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because every year around this time, I'm not big on New Year's resolutions, but I do take this kind of week between Christmas and New Year's. It's usually pretty quiet in the music industry. Mm-hmm. And I like to go through and look at the year, look at my clients, look at the work that was done, look at the releases, look at the projects and see what worked well, what maybe could have worked a little bit better, and just kind of, do an appraisal of that. And then, for my business, we typically get together at a WeWork, with a whiteboard and sit there and do the same thing. And it's one of the most productive meetings of the year because if you're very honest with yourself, you can see, look, we could have done this thing a little better, or look at this over, exceeded our expectations. Yeah. So that's been kind of this last week or so has been setting that up. I've got, some new clients starting January 1. And so this onboarding is part of that. I'm just super excited. I'm very fortunate to get to do what I get to do, and I know you feel the same way. And so, it is work, but when you love what you do, I can't wait to get to my desk every morning. I really can't.
Yeah. It is fun to take stock as you kind of head into new year. And again, like you said, it's and it's been particularly advantageous the way it fell this year on the calendar, just with everything with the dates. And so it's been nice to have the time off and to kind of reflect and say, okay, what am I going to do? What did I not really get to this last year? What do I want to do in the future? And
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's fun to take stock, and it is quiet, and that's what's wonderful.
It is. I also like to look at predictions, and it's really interesting. There's always surprises, and this last year in the music industry, if there's one consistent theme, and that is change, and I think we're going to see that again in 2023. And I'm really excited because there are things you and I haven't even talked about. We haven't really read about yet that are going to happen in 2023. And I'm just super excited to see how things are developing, because right now the music industry is so dynamic. And we joke around that, it's changed since we've been having this conversation. And it's not far from the truth.
It's not. Well, and it's, I think the difference too of this, what we kind of call the new music business, is not only the change, but the pace of change and how rapid things change. And there's always been change in any industry. And when we started in the business, certainly there was change, but it's just the rapid pace with which it comes is what really kind of makes my head spin, because suddenly, and we'll get into this a little bit more in the future, or later on in the show, actually, Ed, but I also think there's just so many things to pay attention to. That's what's also really difficult now is, we were talking about a lot of these lists that we're seeing and certain songs we've never even heard of that are on people's, end of the year top song list. We're like, but it's just so hard to keep up with everything, with the flood of information, the flood of details, the flood of trends, and that's
the flood of music, right?
And the flood of music
with 100,000 tracks uploaded on average every day. That's a crazy amount of music to stay on top of, and we'll cover the list thing in a second. But really quickly, I wanted to mention a few things. One, NPR Music sends out this really cool newsletter, and this last week I received one, and there was a piece by Marissa LaRusso, and it was called New to Us Favorites. And it really hit a nerve with me in a good way that you and I talk about all the time with streaming. It's not necessarily about discovery. It's about rediscovery, as Will Page often says, but it's also about discovering things that maybe have been out for a while because of the fact that there's this volume, there's so much coming out that you may have missed. For example, in this last year, I was really introduced to a few artists that had been around for a while, but for whatever reason, they didn't fall onto my radar. One is Teddy Swims, who I absolutely love. And, it's kind of like binging on a TV show that you find, when I discover one of these new artists, new to me, like Teddy, I went and looked up all of his stuff on DSPs, and it's just phenomenal. He's got just such a ridiculously amazing voice, and the songs are, more hooks than a tackle box. So there was Teddy Swims, there was Haley Witters, country singer-songwriter. We actually had her on the Behind the Setlist podcast, and it's really challenging for a female artist to break out in country music today. Today it has been for a long time. It's really a boys' club, and it's really challenging. And she's doing it, and she's got Everything She Ain't, which is a big single for her that's broken through, and she's doing some great touring and collaborations, and it's all about hard work. And then the last one, of course, I've talked about that band Ghost, who I'd kind of dismissed because of their appearance. They look like, some heavy metal, goth. I don't know. It just didn't seem like something I would listen to. And then you start getting into it, and it's like Tobias Forge, who, is the primary person with Ghost, is like Tom Schultz. He's one of these guys that basically writes and records almost every note, and it's musically a little bit more complex and has more layers than a lot of music today. And it's also tongue in cheek, like a lot of the music I grew up on, whether it was David Bowie or Alice Cooper, or T-Rex, some of these things that had this, this more theatrical glam, But it was also fun. It wasn't all so serious, and that's what I love about Ghost and their latest album, Impera. But anyway, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this new to us favorites, because in the NPR piece, Marissa LaRusso had mentioned some things like Flaming Lips, American Head, Paul McCartney, Hope of Deliverance, Shania Twain, Come On Over. And that's the other thing is you and I, we see these documentaries, like that Abbey Road one that you turned me on to, or like Shania Twain. And then we go and do a deep dive into the music and go, wow, I'd either forgotten about some of these things or I was never exposed to them in the first place.
Exactly. And that it's so true. When you hear what you think is a brand new song, there's a song by this artist Blake Mills called "Don't Tell Our Friends About Me," which I guess I'd never heard it before, and I thought it was brand new, and it's like 8 or 9 years old, and it's like, wow, how did I not hear this song 8 or 9 years ago? Well, because I just didn't hear it. And so you're right. New to us is such a great tagline, because it might be new, but it's certainly new to us because I somehow missed it, and it's so easy to miss.
If it's new to you, it's new.
It's new.
In my
exactly
humble
right.
opinion, right?
Yes.
And I love discovering, and it happens every year, I love discovering new music. I had somebody reach out to me a couple of weeks ago. You and I featured Anna Tivil, and I had, several people reached out, but they'd never heard Anna Tivil before.
Right.
And it was really cool, that she was getting some accolades, but they're like, where has this artist been? How did I not hear about her? Well, when there's so much, I hate using the word content, but I will, there's so much content being uploaded every day. That curation is even more important.
Yes, absolutely. By the way, coming up, also, you and I were talking kind of beforehand. Grammy voting is happening. It ends actually this coming, just a couple of days on the 4th of January, and then looking forward to the telecast, which is going to be on February 5th. And as we've mentioned, I am newly invigorated to watch the Grammy telecast because the last couple have been just so fantastic.
Oh, over the top. I mean, I think the Grammys ran into this problem a few years ago where it was getting predictable, wasn't as exciting as it once was. And then, as you and I have talked about, under the lockdown, they just blew it out of the water. That Grammy performance under lockdown, that show was fantastic, and they've been killing it since. So I'm really looking forward to that. The other thing in your morning coffee this week, actually the last few weeks, I've been doing kind of this running lists, but it's talk about new to me. These best of 2022 lists. Mm-hmm. And, I'll give you some examples like, the top 10 metal albums from Spin, or the best music books from Rolling Stone, or the best box sets from Paste, but there's almost 30 of these lists in your morning coffee the last couple of weeks. Check it out, because what I love about these is I can't keep up with every genre, every mood, all of this stuff. Now, I love these lists because I go in and I listen to some of these things, and I always find things that I missed.
Yep.
And I love this part of the year, this end of the year, where I can kind of go in here and go, oh, what does Pitchfork think are the 38 best rock albums? And again, this is somebody's opinion.
Sure.
But there's always things in there that I never heard of, that I totally missed. And sometimes I discover some real gems.
Oh, without a doubt. It is fun to look at lists, and like you said, you're like, okay, I've never heard of this. And this, as you mentioned, this is something that somebody thought highly enough of to add it in their end of the year list, and there's a lot of us that had never heard of it in the first place. So
that's right.
It is a good time to get caught up and just kind of as you said, even though it's somebody's opinion, but it's probably worth listening to. I can tell you that if somebody puts it on a list. So it is fun to kind of go back and look and see what happened, and there's, again, like everything in the news cycle, there's so many things happening that you kind of forget, oh, yeah, that happened this last year. It could have been 4 years ago because there's so much stuff coming at us. So it is fun to take stock, and I do not anticipate 2023 being slower than 2022.
No.
It's going to be the same. And interesting that I caught this this little nugget of information here. Weekly U.S. vinyl album sales break the modern era single week record. This was out of
Holy
Billboard. More than 2.2 million vinyl albums were sold in the week ending December 22nd, the largest week for the format since Luminate began tracking music sales back in 1991. It's also only the second time in the modern era, 1991 onwards, that weekly vinyl LP sales have exceeded 2 million. Jay, it's 2023. We are talking about
breaking records
in
No
vinyl
pun intended.
sales. That's right. I mean, think about this. And as I keep saying, I never anticipated. I certainly, I could understand a resurgence because lots of things kind of swing back around sometimes. But to the level that we're seeing it, and again, as we've talked so many times about, this number is probably low based on demand because they probably couldn't make enough vinyl to truly
Right. They couldn't fulfill that demand.
No,
right.
exactly.
And you and I have, we've mentioned this, but I think it's that asterisk every time we talk about vinyl that this could be much more, right? I mean, okay, weekly U.S. album sales, vinyl, it's breaking records. What could that have been if we could fulfill all of those orders?
Sure.
And, the last time I talked to Terry Courier over at Music Millennium about it, he was only receiving a small percentage of the vinyl that he ordered. And he even mentioned that he felt like some of the CD sales were unusually high because people would come in looking for vinyl and they didn't have it and they would buy it on CD instead, which sounds crazy to me. But I've heard from folks in the industry, smart people, who have said that they think that number is roughly 25% off, that if we could fulfill conservatively speaking, those numbers could be 25% higher.
Right. And if you said 50% higher, that wouldn't surprise me.
Right.
It is, I mean, it's still going. And it's just stunning. I mean, I love that it's happening. And I think it is a different listening experience. And it is a much more active as opposed to passive. And I just love it. And we grew up in that era, and I'm not pining for the format as much as I'm pleased with the way it makes you listen to music. It's
different, right?
It's different.
It's a different experience. When you put on vinyl, you have to be present and it's lean forward. You can't just lean back and let it play because you have to flip that side.
That's
and because of that, you're more attentive, I think. And I'm not one of those sound audiophiles. I really, me, I love hearing, immersive audio, Dolby Atmos. It's stunning. But for me, if it's a great song on an AM radio, it's a great song. And I'm not one of those guys that says, I'm a vinyl purist and I have to have a $20,000 turntable. But I do have my setup here and I do like listening to vinyl. I remember working at Tower Records and we had to put that vinyl on, and just to me it's a little bit more romantic. And I also like having liner notes. We talked about Ghost Impera. It comes with a booklet with this beautiful artwork in there. And that's one of the things that's really missing from digital music. And I know people have tried to do like PDF downloads and things like that. And as much as I love that, and I love the integration of lyrics and things like that, there's just something romantic to me about having that booklet with images and lyrics and who produced it, who are the sidemen, and all of that stuff.
No, absolutely. It is. It's just so fun. It's just so fun. So more of that coming for sure. And as we start 2023, it is worth mentioning that we have fantastic sponsors that help us put this show on every week, including our good friends over at Bands in Town. Over 74 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It is the #1 artist service platform connecting over 560,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
That's right. And our wonderful little podcast here Year is also brought to you by our friends at Bandzoogle. Built by musicians for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform. Makes it super easy to build a website or EPK for your music. All the features that you need for a professional website, they're already built in, like hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools that'll help you grow your fan list and send newsletters, social media integrations, and live support from their musician-friendly team. 7 days a week. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com. Try it for free for 30 days. Just use the promo code Morning Coffee, all one word, and that'll get you 15% off your first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Morning Coffee.
And we are also sponsored by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It is edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town, which I already mentioned.
That's right. And finally, Music Business Association. For more than 6 decades, the Music Biz Conference, it used to be called NARM years ago. That's the point of origin for inspiration, collaboration, all throughout the music business and beyond. So join us in Nashville, May 15th through the 18th for the Music Biz Conference.
Yes, indeed. Jay will be buying drinks there. And of course, Jay Gilbert. Who is Jay Gilbert, you ask, in 2023? Well, he is a music industry consultant. He is the curator of the fabulous weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, Warner Music Groups, and Fox Home Entertainment.
And this gentleman sitting across from me is Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Groups.
Yes, a checkered employment history I have.
Checkered past.
To say the least.
So funny.
Well, Jay, what do you say we jump into some of these stories? They are end of the year stories, beginning of the year stories from Dima. Music streaming highlights. Streaming platform names the top 2022 songs.
I thought this was really interesting because you get a sense of every DSP is different. You would think that because their emails all look the same. Like if you look at Apple Music, Pandora, Spotify, Deezer, whatever, most of the emails that they send out with their new release, emails, they kind of have the same artists, a lot of them, but the listening behavior on these platforms really varies. But before we jump into that, if you haven't heard of Dima, Dima is really the group that represents all of the DSPs, Amazon, Apple Music, Pandora, Spotify, all that stuff. Their mission is to promote and protect the ability of music fans to legally engage with creative content wherever and whenever they want, and for artists to more easily reach fans and to make new ones. So in their statement, they say that they work tirelessly to ensure that progress for fans, artists, songwriters, rights holders, and the entire music ecosystem is protected and expanded both today and in the future. And I've gotten to know these folks a little bit, especially if you look at this particular piece. It doesn't say who it was written by. It just says Dima. But, we've spoken with Garrett Levin, great guy over there at Dima. And whenever I have any kind of questions or need to understand what they're up to, he's my go-to guy over there. But I thought this was really interesting because they took some of these DSPs like Amazon Music, Apple Music, Pandora, and they list their top 10. And I think we should kind of review like the top 5 of some of these things because I thought they were really interesting. But
yeah, for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the highlights here.
Yeah, well, as they mentioned kind of at the top, it says fans showed their growing love for Latin music for a 3rd consecutive year, streaming Bad Bunny, Chencho Corleone, Karol G, and others throughout the year. Latin music and streaming continue to be a powerful duo, and that has been sort of part of our personal education over the last year and a half, as we when you kind of look at the unbelievable power of Latin music. It's always been big, but boy, it is really, and that is interesting. The way streaming has opened the door for so many different music based in other countries or other territories is one of the cool things about streaming music now, which is how easy it is to find out what's going on outside of your neighborhood, your county, your state, your country, and get exposed to a lot of really interesting and cool music from around the world.
Yeah, and we talk about Bruno Del Granado over at CAA quite a bit because he's really helped us to really dig into Latin music over the last couple of years. And, when you see something like Bad Bunny having a #1 album all in Spanish, things have really changed. It's about the music, right?
Mm-hmm.
Music featured in movies, television shows, played a big influence on music charts this last year. And, fans showing their love for We Don't Talk About Bruno, which we'll cover in a second because it's #1 on a couple of these charts. That was that song from the film Encanto. And the song Enemy from the Netflix series Arcane were popular across all platforms. So you're looking at K-pop, you're looking at Latin music, and you're looking at some of these syncs, music placed in film, TV, games, and things like that were just massive.
Absolutely. And of course, we've talked a lot about this year and last year about catalog. And as this article points out, streaming empowered fans to rediscover music from an earlier era and discover remixes that bring together previous hits and new sounds. You can't talk about 2022 without talking about the Kate Bush song Running Up That Hill, A Deal with God in parentheses, originally coming out back in 1985, and Cold Heart, which of course was the big hit for
Panau.
For exactly the Panau remix, actually. Excuse me, with Dua Lipa and Elton John. And boy, what a year it was for catalog, as it is every year.
Yeah, and it was, I mentioned DEMA CEO Garrett Levin said that, reflecting the diversity of music and how fans listen, our analysis underscores that lists of the most played, most liked, and most requested songs by music fans on streaming services are themselves unique. So I'd like to kind of jump into like maybe the top 5 of a couple of these, and I'll kick it off because I thought this was really, really super interesting. This is from Amazon Music. This is their most requested songs via Alexa. Right?
Yeah.
So, oh boy, now mine's turned on. Okay. Hopefully it won't start yelling at me. I'm surrounded by all of these smart speakers, so I have to be careful. Sometimes they just start talking to me or themselves. Anyway, so the most requested songs, #1, We Don't Talk About Bruno. And that makes a lot of sense because a couple of the moods or genres on this Amazon smart speaker, so I'll stop naming it, for a while there, it was chill music was really kind of top. And then during the lockdown, it became children's music for obvious reasons. So when I see something like We Don't Talk About Bruno, which is super popular among the younger set, that makes a lot of sense from me. Also, there were a couple of Imagine Dragons in the top 10, but #2 was Enemy by Imagine Dragons, right? #3 was As It Was by Harry Styles. #4, Easy on Me by Adele. And one that kind of surprised me a little bit was Fancy Like by Walker Hayes. I knew it was popular, but this kind of shows the diversity of the Amazon Music crowd and how it kind of leans a little bit adult. At least that's what I pulled out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And just a shout out for that device for Alexa. I had dinner 2 nights ago with 2 music publicists, a couple friends of ours, and he was talking about his mother who's 96 and how important Alexa is. She's losing her vision. And she was a big reader, and she's a huge classical music fan. And they got her this device. They got her an Alexa just a year or so ago, and it has changed her outlook. It has changed her life. She just
how cool is
sits
that?
around and listens to audiobooks, and then says, "Alexa, play me, a Bach concerto," and it has just changed her life. And
that's so cool.
It's a wonderful story to hear. Jumping over to Apple Music, the top songs for them, this is globally, #1, interesting, was Stay by the Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber. Because that came out not this last year. It came out a couple of years ago. As It Was by Harry Styles, Wait For You featuring Drake and Thames by Future, Super Gremlin by Kodak Black, and Easy On Me by Adele.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
So that top 5, Apple Music, compared to Amazon Music, to me it sounds a little bit younger, a little bit hipper in some regards. Not a lot of crossover with those two, except for
Not
maybe
at all.
the Adele track.
Yeah.
I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. It is interesting. And I don't know what to make of that other than to say that it's just going to be different. I mean,
yeah. Well,
and
let's
then
look at Pandora really
Yeah.
quickly. So, when you do, when you like something on Pandora, you give it a thumbs up. So these are the top thumbs up, from 2022 on Pandora, and that top 5, Wait for You, by Future. That was the one featuring Drake and Thames. Provenza by Karol G. To the Moon by Junior Choi. I Hate You by SZA. And Do We Have a Problem by Nicki Minaj and Lil Baby. So Pandora, often gets this bad rap that it's lean back, it's people at work just kind of listening to free internet radio, ad supported. It's much more than that, and I think you can tell by the songs that that are most popular there, that these listeners are engaged. And a lot of times I work with colleges, and I'll often ask classes like, how do you listen to music? And what surprises me is a lot of them, it's YouTube, number one.
Yeah.
And that Pandora is, surprisingly, it's not typically in the top 3, but there are a lot of students who like Pandora, especially the ad supported on there. But I thought that was a lot younger and hipper than I would have imagined from Pandora.
Yes. And then we have Spotify. This is their global top tracks. Number 1 is As It Was by Harry Styles. Number 2 is Heat Wave by Glass Animals. Again, Stay with Justin Bieber by the Kid Laroi. Number 3. And then we've got a couple of Bad Bunny tracks. Mi Porto Bonito by Bad Bunny and Chencho Corleone. And then Titi Mi Pregunto by
you.
Bad Bunny.
Well
so
done.
so two Bad Bunny tracks on the global list. And of course, you can't talk about 2022 without talking about Bad Bunny either. So I guess no surprise there. But again, it's so interesting how broadly different all of the lists are.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think, let's see, there's one other one on here, and that was YouTube. And remember, the number 1 music streaming platform is not Spotify. It's YouTube by, a mile. Not necessarily YouTube Music, but YouTube in general. And so this is really the top music videos in the United States from YouTube. Number 1, We Don't Talk About Bruno. I thought that was interesting. And one of the things about YouTube is, you don't necessarily have to pay to have a subscription there. So the barrier to entry is very low, and the amount of people that use it is ridiculous, So you've got We Don't Talk About Bruno, number 1, Super Gremlin by Kodak Black, Surface Pressure by Jessica Darrow. I'll let you pronounce that. How did you pronounce that?
Titi Mi Pregunto.
Yeah, I love it when you do that. By Bad Bunny, and then Wait for You, by Future that we talked about. So there are some, similarities with all of these lists, but it's really interesting to me that each digital service provider, each DSP, has their own kind of personality and the way that they lean towards different genres and moods and demographics. And I'd love to see a little bit more data on this. In fact, I'm going to dig in and see if I can find a little bit more, but it's interesting that they're not all exactly the same.
Yes. Yeah. Fascinating, actually. And again, with YouTube, we've talked about this so many times. I mean, there's just so much stuff on YouTube you're not going to get anywhere else. And I've discovered just recently a band that I was a huge fan of back, it's been 23 years ago, and I actually played with them for a bit and recorded with them a little bit. And of course, all their stuff's a band called Stick Kitty that was they never got signed, but they won a Yamaha.
So they never got signed. It wouldn't be on Spotify, but you found it on YouTube.
Oh, it's there on YouTube, exactly. Yeah, and some live stuff and some new stuff, and it's like, gosh, YouTube. Yeah. It is the biggest black hole there is in terms of time suck.
Oh my gosh. And that you're not even touching on some of our favorite channels like Rick Beato, where you can dig even deeper and fall into that rabbit hole. And I can't tell you how many tracks I've discovered from Rick Beato.
No. And he's got a great one up right now with a really good interview with from Smashing Pumpkins with Billy Corrigan.
Nice.
Great conversation. It's like an hour and a half, and there goes an hour and a half. Well worth it, but it's like,
Right.
oh my God, where did the day go?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, great article. Up next, Jay, is from Rolling Stone, 23 moments that made us smile in 2022.
Yeah, that was a fun article, and a lot of it isn't music. And I just wanted to touch on a few of the music ones that I thought were interesting. Some of these things I'd kind of forgotten about, but it was really interesting. One of the ones that they talked about of these moments was Olivia Rodrigo covering Veruca Salt's Seether back in April, which was stunning. And I loved hearing her do that. I loved hearing guitars back in some of this younger popular music, and how they put it in this. And a lot of people, I should say that there were so many people that contributed to this article. There was like, a whole bunch of them. Jonathan Bernstein, Charlie Cooper, Brenna Ehrlich, Elizabeth Garber Paul, C.T. Jones, Miles Klee, Andrea Marks, and Joe Rodriguez, Lisa Tosi. So there were a whole bunch of people that contributed to this. But let's start with Olivia Rodrigo. For a lot of fans of Gen X rock, Olivia Rodrigo's Brutal already brought to mind alt-rock mainstays Veruca Salt. So it kind of reminded people of that. So when she covered, Veruca Salt's Seether, kicking off her highly anticipated Sour tour in Portland, Oregon, it felt like a match made in grunge heaven. She thanked her mom for introducing her to the 1994 classic about rage and self-loathing. And the band posted on Twitter, watching Rodrigo introduce Can't Fight the Seether to her young fans made our day. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. This one I remember very well. This mentioned here is Joni Mitchell plays at the Newport Festival, her first full set in 22 years. And again, talking about a YouTube moment that was captured on YouTube in this article, in this particular piece. It mentions in the first full year where fans returned to concerts en masse, no moment better represented the joy and unexpected alchemy of live music than when Joni Mitchell made her surprise return to the stage at Newport Folk Festival to perform her first set since 2000. She's still recovering from an aneurysm that had left her unable to sing for years. She began the set with hesitation, relying on collaborators to sing lead, but by the performance's end, Mitchell had played a guitar solo, covering doo-wop favorites, and offered breathtaking reinterpretations of classics like Both Sides Now, showing that at 79, she's far from done finding powerful new avenues of self-expression. The world couldn't help but smile. Her performance went mega viral and became a much-needed tale of persistence, survival, and the magic of live music. So well said.
And speaking of new to us,
cool.
We talked about earlier, just think of all the people who are now discovering her due to this news. I thought that was really interesting. The next one is Lizzo plays James Madison's crystal flute. That was back in October.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. And, she did an amazing job. She was even twerking when she was doing it. Of course, there was conservative pundits like Matt Walsh essentially foaming at the mouth. We're very upset about it. How dare she play this respected piece of American history and play it so well. And also playing it while black, Anyway, Lizzo is doing fine and hot off her second time being the musical guest on Saturday Night Live. As they said in this piece, suck it, Walsh.
Exactly. So a lot of other non-music related things, but worth checking out. It's the link is in your morning coffee, and do check it out. 23 moments that made us smile in 2022 from Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Up next, of course, Jay from Hypebot, our good friends over at Hypebot. Why this video, that is a thing, is like an official roadmap to success on TikTok. And, very interesting article. This one, it doesn't say who it's from. It's just in their music marketing section.
I think Bruce Houghton wrote this one.
Okay, must have been Bruce. Yeah, that's right. So as it starts off, so why this video? TikTok has added a feature designed to take the mystery out of why a video is recommended on a user's feed that also offers creators strong clues on how to be more successful on the platform. And I always am scratching my head why this whatever was sent to me. Like, why in the hell did they send this to me? And so, as they say in this article, to help people understand why a particular video has been recommended to them, they are rolling out in quotation marks, why this video over the coming weeks. And here's how it works. In the user's For You feed, tap on the share panel, then tap the question mark icon called Why This Video. From there, you can see reasons why a particular video was recommended. And TikTok says that its recommendation system is powered by technical models that measure the following: user interactions, such as content that they watch, like share, comment on, and search for; accounts they follow or suggested accounts; content posted recently in their region; popular content in their region; and adjusting for things that users say that they are not interested in. As TikTok says, our goal is to serve a range of relevant and entertaining content.
Yeah, I did that. I tested this out on a few TikTok videos, and it was interesting. You know, basically what it comes down to is you're being shown this video because you've liked and engaged with other videos like this, or this is very popular among your demographic or geography, or, you know, it's some of the things were a little bit obvious. Like if you actually click on it and then ask why, it says how TikTok recommends videos for you. TikTok's mission is to inspire creativity and bring joy. These are their words from when you click on that. We're building a global community where you can create and share authentically, discover the world, and connect with others. The For You feed is part of what enables that connection and discovery. Okay. And in this piece from Hypebot from Bruce Houghton, there's a kind of a subheading that says a roadmap to success on TikTok, question mark. A little time spent looking at the Why This Video feed in TikTok videos by similar creators, as well as their own short videos, should net some valuable insights on how to make content that is more successful on the platform. Sometimes those adjustments, I can't even speak today, sometimes those adjustments can mean piggybacking new trends, but often they're also about content length, captioning, and other factors. And he mentions, you know, piggybacking new trends. That's kind of low-hanging fruit. If you, you know, jump onto somebody's bandwagon, you can sometimes grab some video views. It's challenging on TikTok because I always say that it's the easiest platform to gain views and the hardest to gain engagement. So if you can do something that's a little bit more original and kind of start your own fire as opposed to jumping on somebody else's, I think you can find some success with that. But, you know, a lot of these algorithms for DSPs, for YouTube, for TikTok, whatever it is, it's always interesting to hear what the platform is saying about how to optimize. And I think this is really interesting that you can now click on a little button on TikTok to see why you were fed a certain video.
Yeah, it's interesting. Absolutely. And of course, as we head into 2023, Jay, we will be talking about TikTok a few times probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have all those agreements with the majors that are coming due right now, and that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And
they will likely
it's also
be
that
introducing
argument.
Service.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say they may be introducing certainly a streaming service, or or a new name to be determined, and not sure where it's going to happen. Maybe not here, but certainly somewhere. And
TikTok music has been rumored. You know, we'll see what happens with that. But as you mentioned, it's going to be a really interesting year in TikTok news. It's sort of like Spotify in that their publicity department is really good at getting that message out. And so there's this constant flow of information about innovations, changes, updates within those platforms.
Yes, indeed. And our last story of the day, Jay, from Variety, audio engineers have the ears of the artists, and now a piece of the project, which is really interesting. This is by Charlie Emter. And it's talking about, you know, historically, in terms of getting a piece of the pie when it comes to songs they work on, audio engineers were kind of left out of the picture. It was typically producers and, of course, the artists themselves. And this article is pointing out that a lot of these audio engineers, and again, it also is important to kind of recognize that, in earlier in our careers, at that time, the lines of demarcation in the studio were very succinct. There was the producer, and the producer was the producer. There was an engineer and oftentimes a second engineer, and they were, they did their engineering thing, but never the lines were crossed and
the
blurred.
roles were defined.
The roles were very defined, and that is not the case now.
No.
And it's, who is the audio engineer versus the producer, and so many producers are now songwriters as well, and the same thing with engineers. They're getting involved in this. So this is not a surprise, really, that from a management standpoint, a lot of these engineers are getting managers and having people get work on their behalf and things like that. So
they're really blurring the lines, right?
Yes, exactly.
And leave it to Variety to be kind of upfront on this, because it's such cutting edge stuff, and we rave all the time about Variety's music business coverage. They talk with Corey Litwin, who joined Neil Jacobson's writer-producer management agency, Hollywood Media, as executive VP a couple of years ago. And he says that engineers are the new rock stars. Litwin, who's based in LA, said this, they're collaborating with producers on beats to get the track ready for the artist, and they're making sure that the artist records on that beat and that it sounds good on it. Once the track is done, they may help the artist push it onto final album track lists. They're more like producers now, or they take on an A&R role. And I think as we talk about blurring lines, as you mentioned, the producer, engineer, well, producers are now, they're songwriting, they're artists in their own right, a lot of them. And now we're talking about some of these folks that maybe you weren't thinking about, these engineers who are creating beats that are, they're the foundation of some of these songs. And they make or break a song. And I think this is really, really important with this new music industry.
Yeah, the article mentions that most audio engineers are paid a day rate, but Litwin believes they are entitled to a lot more than working for higher fee. They deserve participatory rights too, which for a hit song could mean six-figure payouts. And they mentioned the relationship between an artist and an engineer, and oftentimes when you're working with a producer, that producer isn't there. There's a lot of work that is done with just the artist and the engineer. So they do have very much a participatory kind of stake in a lot of these things, especially the way the industry has changed over the years. Yeah. And Litwin was saying a big part of our job is talking to the other producer managers and publishers and educating them on the expanding role of engineers. We are telling these engineers, you don't need to talk about splits and money and all that stuff. We will deal with that. So we handle the business side for them, and they can do what they do best in the studio. And boy, if you're an engineer, that's you want somebody doing that on your behalf.
Right. And their service is valuable and it should be remunerated. See, I threw that word in there.
Thank you very much.
And also, just to be clear, what we're talking about here when they're talking about a piece is publishing. We're talking about, primarily, like if you're going to help create this song, you should have a piece of that songwriting credit. Now, with producers on the other side, sometimes they will get points or a percentage of the master. So there are different ways that you can make revenue from this. But I think this is really interesting, and I'm glad they've got representation because some of these engineers are more important than just following the instruction from the producer in, getting that balance, that mix right. A lot of times they're actually helping to create the song. And in that situation, they should participate.
Absolutely. And this paragraph here in the article says that audio engineers have especially close relationships with artists has become an increasingly key access point for managers and A&R reps hoping to get beats and songs to a specific act, supplanting or even replacing traditional A&Rs, which is...
There it is.
Yeah, exactly. And it is, it's a different world, outside of the labels completely. What happens in the studio is certainly at times the A&R person is there.
Yeah.
But so much happens with no label representation or input whatsoever.
Oh, absolutely. And you just hit it right on the head for me. It's a different world. Like if you watch the Billie Eilish documentary and you see Phineas and Billie recording, in the back of a tour bus or in a hotel room or in their bedroom, it's a different world now. We don't necessarily need to, and I love recording studios, don't get me wrong, but there's so much of this ecosystem that's been turned upside down where you can record world-class music on your own. And with these engineers helping with creating these sounds with the artists as well as the producers, it's not the same as it used to be. It's now this new ecosystem, and it's not a cookie cutter approach. I think you have to look at each one of these as an individual case. So in this song, who helped craft this song and what was their level of participation? And I think those, that list of people, whether it used to be maybe just the songwriters and the producer might get a point or two, and it might be the sidemen, it's a little bit more complicated now. And I think it needs to be addressed, like they say in this article, these engineers need to have representation. Producers have had representation for decades. It's just a different ecosystem now. It's a little bit more complicated.
Absolutely. And it's a bouillabaisse of people and skill sets, and it's changed so dramatically. That's one of the things that has really happened over the years. So on that note, we will wrap up the episode. Boy, we thanks everyone for listening in. We also want to thank the Music Business Association, Bandzoogle, Hypebot, and Bands in Town, our super cool and hip sponsors that help us do the show every week. We appreciate it. And Jay, Happy New Year to you, 2023.
Happy New Year to you too, my friend.
Happy New Year to all of our listeners. We sure appreciate you coming around and listening to us every week as well. And on that note, I should say, we will wrap up this episode. Thanks for listening in, folks. We will see you next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.